All right, let's start here. Ngizwe Mchunu will remain in custody for another week. The former Ukhozi FM presenter is one of the suspects believed to have incited last week's violence. Mchunu appeared in the Randburg Magistrates Court earlier today. Reporter Govan Whittles has been following the story and he joins us live now. Govan, thank you so much for joining us. So the NPA says it is going to oppose bail when that formal application comes up. I think it's next week. Tell us why they're so adamant he needs to remain behind bars.
Well, the main reason, Sally, is that they believe he's a flight risk, and that's based on his actions after he realized the police were looking for him. And Ngizwe Mchunu left his employment as a popular radio DJ in 2017, and today in court his advocate told the court that he's not that popular where he could possibly incite violence, and it's only his arrest that's made him as popular. But we heard from the state saying that his actions, and particularly his remarks, actually could have incited violence, and they believe the sequence of events which followed after the 11th of July could be attributed to him in some way or another. What's really suspicious for the state is that he used a private jet to go from Johannesburg to Durban after he realized the police were looking for him. And the state hasn't said who the jet belongs to or how he could afford it, but they say that this is grounds enough for them to oppose bail, even though this is a Schedule 1 offense, because he could use the same private jet to skip the country. Let's have a look at what the NPA spokesperson had to say.
He allegedly made utterances during a press conference that he held in Bryanston, which is within the jurisdiction of the Randburg Magistrate Court, where these utterances amount to incitement to commit public violence. And we will be opposing bail because when he heard that he is wanted by law enforcement, he allegedly left Joburg through a private jet. And when pressure abounded for him to be arrested, he handed himself over to the police. So we'll be arguing that he's a flight risk, and we're arguing that the incidents or the commission of all these offenses induced a sense of outrage within the community. And we know the ripple effects of what happened throughout the country.
So I just want to unpack a little more that clip, because it's fascinating. You've already spoken about the concerns around this private jet for a man who certainly cannot afford it himself. And I think, you know, they say follow the money. That might be well something that the NPA is looking at with a fair, good cause perhaps. But this utterances at a press conference, is this what they are pinning his potential link as a mastermind in this unrest too?
Well, I should say that the NPA has been hesitant to use the word mastermind, and they've been firm on their insistence that they're only prosecuting him for incitement to cause public violence. And they say that so far, the only evidence they have is the press conference where he made those remarks in isiZulu, and they say they've brought in a translator, and based on the translation and interpretation of his remarks at the press conference, they believe they have a strong enough case to pursue a charge of incitement to cause public violence. Whether or not he's the mastermind of the unrest would depend on whether the NPA could link him to a network of people that the executive has told us had intended to disrupt the economy and cause massive damage. As yet, they haven't been able to link him. So he's only being prosecuted for saying that when the former president in jail, we can't be expected to accept that. I think that's the loose paraphrasing translation of his remarks. But the NPA believes it could later move the schedule up from a Schedule 1 offense to a Schedule 4 offense, essentially saying it's a more serious charge. And they think that they could add charges at a later stage, but as things stand at the moment, Sally, they're not confident to prosecute him on anything other than incitement to cause public violence.
All right, so as you say, the charges could be added to it, could be unpacked, and it could emerge later that possibly he is one of the masterminds. But we have been told all along that this was an attempted insurrection, that there are 12 masterminds. These are not the people who might have publicized what you should do, but these would be the people who had planned and plotted the whole thing. Those are really big fish. I know that you covered the arrest of one of the other men who's been accused of incitement to violence, but he doesn't look like a big fish on the surface either. So when are we going to see these so-called masterminds behind bars?
It's anyone's guess at this point, Sally, and the NPA has told me that out of the more than 800 suspects, they are not preferring charges of treason or sedition against anyone at this point, and the charges remain incitement to cause public violence. But while the arrests have been made by the police and the NPA have brought these handful of people to court on the incitement to cause public violence charges, there have also been a number of significant political developments. The first being the former mayor of eThekwini, Zandile Gumede, going to lay a charge against what she says is an attempt to smear her as a coup plotter and an instigator of the unrest, and distancing herself from that. And then the once jailed former chairperson of the Beja region of the ANC, Andile Lungisa, releasing a long statement in which he reveals that he's been charged for contravening the COVID-19 regulations, but also says that during questioning with the Hawks, he was accused of trying to assemble an arsenal to overthrow the state, and says that he vehemently denies those allegations. And then, of course, the two that we know of, South Africa's former ambassador to Japan, Thulani Dlomo, denying he had anything to do with last week's unrest. And then the retired Lieutenant General in the SANDF, Mojo Motau. You would remember him for convening a cadres forum in Pretoria and seemingly being supportive of former President Jacob Zuma. He's also denied any involvement in the unrest and says he doesn't know Thulani Dlomo. So while the small fish, I suppose, are being brought to court, it does look that there are a number of efforts and movements being made in political circles to distance themselves from the chaos that happened while the police investigate the insurrection and the attempted insurrection. So far, no indication from the police that they are close to arresting a mastermind that told people to target warehouses and cause serious economic sabotage.
And meanwhile, Ngizwe Mchunu's family obviously very unhappy about the fact that he's still behind bars because they say it's a Schedule 1 offence. Just set up that clip that you've got for us.
This one by Bonginkosi Kanyile. You would remember him as the Fees Must Fall activist. Also spent some time in jail for the Fees Must Fall struggle. And he's been nominated to be the spokesperson for the Mchunu family. They deny that he's a flight risk. They say he couldn't be a flight risk because he handed himself in. But they're also very unhappy with the decision to postpone the appearance for 7 days for a bail application, as they believe he should have received bail automatically. Let's have a look at what he had to say.
The family, of course, it is very dumbfounded, because those who were inside the court, I'm sure they were able to see that this was a Schedule 1 offense. And under normal circumstances or under ordinary situation, when it is Schedule 1 offense, bail becomes something which becomes automatic. But today, we're not able to see that. Instead, the case was postponed for the 28th. So on behalf of the family, as I've been chosen by the family to come and declare that we are very dumbfounded about how the court has dealt with the matter. And if the court will continue to deal with this matter, we're very worried whether justice is going to be served.
And very quickly, Govan, is the formal bail application next week?
Yeah, that's right. It'll go ahead next Wednesday when the state says it will lead more evidence on the use of this private jet, as well as possibly more evidence on whether he's connected to a network of people that planned the unrest last week.
All right, thank you so much for that update. That's our reporter, Govan Whittles. Well,